defense. Even after his chamber passed a bill to fund the government for another month, the speaker felt compelled to answer Democrats' threats of withholding votes in the Senate over a deal on DACA.
They fully intend to shut down the government unless they get their way. And we sincerely hope that Senator Schumer will abandon this shutdown strategy.
Republicans fear the optics of owning the White House and both chambers of Congress, yet still presiding over a shutdown. The president today on the road in Pennsylvania offered his explanation of Democrats holding a funding bill hostage.
The Democrats want to see a shutdown to get off this subject because this subject is not working for them. The tax cuts and tax reform has not been working well for the Democrats.
And while Schumer says he wants a deal, even endorsing a procedural vote for the Senate to debate a funding bill, he and other Democrats know Republicans need at least 9, if not more, Democrats to vote on a final funding bill.
The president is sitting on the sidelines, pretending that Barack Obama is president somehow and criticizing the process by which we create legislation in Congress to pass a budget that funds our country.
All right, so both sides have their well-rehearsed talking points and will speak passionately about why a shutdown wouldn't be and would be the other side's fault. Lost somewhere seems to be the discussion about the real policy points, how to fund rebuilding the military, what to do with the so-called dreamers, what the president's border wall would actually look like. Shannon, what's clear is that neither side wants to be blamed for a shutdown, would love to blame the other side, but yet, as the countdown clock points out, 24 hours and 54 minutes until the government runs out of money, neither side is willing to take the political risk of forcing this issue.
You are right. All right, Leland, we are going to talk much more about that. But yeah, tomorrow night we'll be right here and we'll see what happens. Thank you very much for your report. So what is happening right now on the Hill? Senior Capitol Hill producer Chad Pergram has the very latest, including some heated words on the Senate floor. Chad, you've been tracking this all day and late into the night. What can you tell us?
Well, people were pretty surprised that when the Senate got this bill after the House passed it, that senators didn't rip the Band-Aid off. They didn't try to address this right away. What happened was the politics. The politics has been, raging through this. And the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, he sort of changed the language just a little bit. We've been hearing about DACA and Democrats wanting to attach DACA to this bill to fund the government. He's calling it something else. Listen.
Illegal immigration. That's what they've shoehorned into all this. Shoehorned that issue right into it and said we won't solve any of this other stuff until we deal with this.
And that's the interesting thing here, that they're talking about illegal immigration. That polls well on the Republican side of the aisle. Democrats want to make this about DACA. Now, what we're going to have sometime, either tomorrow or maybe even as late as 1 o'clock in the morning Saturday, is a procedural vote to end debate. This is what's called invoking cloture. That needs 60 votes. And let me run through the Senate math, and this is so important. Right now, there are only 50 available Republican votes in the Senate. John McCain is away. There are 3 Republican noes. We have Jeff Flake, who told me just about a half hour ago that he is going to be a no. We have Rand Paul of Kentucky and Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Joe Manchin, a Democrat of West Virginia, indicates that he would vote to end debate. He would also vote for the CR. Mike Rounds of South Dakota, he indicated earlier in the day that he was going to be a no. He says he will probably be a yes. Here's the problem. You need 60 votes to end debate. So even if you are at 47 Republican yays, you're still 3 short of 50. And that means you need to get 13 Democrats. Well, that is a high, high bar. Here's the other thing. I talked about the bill, this procedural vote, maybe not happening till 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. Now, the government's supposed to be funded tomorrow night. If they do this by the book, they won't take that vote until about 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday after the government runs out of money.
All right, Chad, I understand that there were some pretty emotional folks as this was going down tonight.
Yeah, the Senate Minority Whip, Dick Durbin, referenced that there were DACA recipients sitting in the public gallery. There were about 10 of them sitting in the front row, all holding hands, listening to these emotional speeches in the gallery. There were 2 girls sitting in the row behind them with their arms around one another. One of them was kind of sobbing. She had her winter scarf held up against her nose, and the other one was trying to console her. That shows you how emotional this issue is and how at least Democrats are trying to respond to those DACA recipients, where they try to change this status as of March 5th. That's why Republicans say there is still time to work this out and why this shouldn't be attached to this government spending bill.
All right, Chad Pergram, live on the Hill. You'll be with us, I'm sure, tomorrow night as we watch the clock tick down. Thank you. All right, from the countdown to the shutdown to the showdown over the dossier, fireworks in the House Intelligence Committee tonight over transcripts from Fusion GPS co-founder Glenn Simpson's testimony last November. There is also a 4-page memo that some House members have seen, allegedly, they say, showing alarming, disturbing government abuse of the FISA surveillance program. At least one saying he can't believe it's something that would happen in this country. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry is here now on what he's found on all these fronts tonight. Good evening, Ed.
Shannon, good to see you. A major development because senior Republicans are now privately saying that some heads are going to roll at the FBI and Justice Department. Big names could be out of their jobs and facing major investigations if that 4-page memo you mentioned that lawmakers are calling shocking actually goes public. That is why tonight pressure is building. Trending on social media is the hashtag release the memo, meaning that 4-page memo. It's picked up steam after the House Intelligence Committee moved to share that memo first to members of Congress beyond the Intel panel, and then the committee is talking about maybe going fully public so everybody in our audience can see exactly what is in there. Now, the committee also voted unanimously to release all 165 pages of Glenn Simpson's testimony from last November, in which he revealed that in order to dig up dirt on candidate Donald Trump, Fusion GPS was being paid $50,000 a month plus expenses. Remember, some of that money was coming in from the Clinton camp and the Democratic National Committee. Now, Simpson denies he gave the dossier to BuzzFeed News, saying he got very upset when they published it because it was very dangerous to put this raw information out. Then he goes on to charge in his testimony that Russian President Vladimir Putin went on a witch hunt to track down U.S. intelligence sources. Simpson claims people were actually killed, testifying, quote, "I mean, there was a series of episodes where people were arrested or died mysteriously that came shortly after the disclosure of the existence of this information. I do believe there was a bit of an old-fashioned purge." But Simpson admitted he was involved in leaking other sensitive info, including the fact that FBI Director James Comey was investigating alleged Trump campaign connections to Russia, all because Simpson was angry that Comey had announced he was reopening the Clinton email probe shortly before the election. Simpson testifying, quote, "We decided if James Comey wasn't going to tell people about this investigation, meaning Trump, he had violated the rules and would only be fair if the world knew that both candidates, not just Clinton, were under FBI investigation." Also worth noting that when pressed, Simpson hedged on the accuracy of the information. And in fact, that's important because House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes is trying to get at the question of whether Obama officials used unverified information from the dossier to get approval for surveillance of Trump officials. As Fox first reported on this program last week, Nunes has privately told colleagues there was FISA abuse by FBI and justice officials. That's why it's significant. Simpson testified that top Obama Justice Department holdover Bruce Orr asked him to turn over some of the Fusion GPS info from the dossier to the Justice Department. The question now the Republicans have, was that used for surveillance? Watch.
This memo must become public, that it alarms us greatly, and that I believe that the consequence of its release will be major changes in people currently working at the FBI and Department of Justice.
Now, the Intel Committee's top Democrat, Adam Schiff, pushed back that the memo is, quote, rife with factual inaccuracies and referencing highly classified materials. This is meant, he says, only to give Republican House members a distorted view of the FBI. This may help carry White House water, but is a deep disservice to our law enforcement professionals. Schiff added Republicans are trying to distract from the fact that Steve Bannon and Corey Lewandowski both declined to answer some questions behind closed doors this week, and planned testimony tomorrow from White House aide Hope Hicks has now been postponed. Shannon?
All right, Ed Henry with all the details tonight. Thank you very much. Whole lot to talk about with Oklahoma Republican Senator James Lankford, who serves on the Senate Intelligence Committee, among others. Great to have you with us tonight.
Glad to be with you, actually.
Okay, so let's start. You just barely made it over here from the Hill. So let's talk about what's going on over there now. Just a little over 24 hours away from a potential shutdown. Doesn't sound like the votes are there to get a temporary funding order going. Now, I'm hearing tonight from the Democrat side, maybe something in the order of 4 to 5 days. I'm hearing from one GOP source, 5 to 6 days. What happens?
Yeah, it's very bizarre. I mean, again, Chuck Schumer knows all the issues on pulling a budget together. You can't do it in 4 or 5 days. It's a very complicated, large document. And the strangest thing is, he stood on the floor and said, we need to do national defense. Well, we tried to bring the defense bill up months ago, and they blocked it, and said, no, we want to use that for negotiations. So it's a strange Orwellian doublespeak that's going on through this. The process does take a while. When you actually get a budget agreement, it takes about 2 weeks to actually finalize the bill to be able to get it done. So to do a 4-day continuing resolution or 5-day to negotiate means you do another 5-day one and another 5-day one. What we put out was a 1-month piece to say, let's finish all the negotiations, get time to write the bill, get it done in an orderly manner, not try to do this continual shutdown cliffs every 4 or 5 days.
It sounds like that's where we're headed, though.
It does, and it's one of these moments that's very odd, again, to be able to walk through. This is about, as the leader mentioned, it's about illegal immigration. It's about DACA. It's about trying to get to this negotiation. I've been in part of that group trying to be able to negotiate this. In fact, Tom Tillis and I were in the group actually doing all the negotiations with Dick Durbin until we were kicked out of that group because we wanted to deal with border security. They only wanted to deal with DACA. And we had said, no, we have to deal with border security and DACA at the same time. We raised it enough that they basically said, you're not invited anymore because we only want to deal with DACA in this group. And so that's been this frustrating thing all along. Since October, the White House put out, here's the parameters of a deal. Here's what we want to be able to have. Again, Chuck Schumer was on the floor today saying we have no idea what the president wants. The president put that out in October. Now, they may not like what he put out, but he put out in October. We've been trying to be able to get to negotiation for months, and they've been stalling. It's been a very frustrating season.
So the two sides are wildly divergent on this, whether we're talking about a pathway to citizenship for the DACA folks, ending chain migration, or ramping it up in some way, a little bit of money for the border wall or $30 billion for the border wall. I mean, they're all over the place. How do you get to common ground and something that can get enough votes, even to get to the procedural hurdle to get to a vote in the Senate? I mean, that seems nearly impossible right now.
What they're trying to do right now is to say, let's take the DACA issue, let's poke it into a funding bill, and then their request is, let's legalize 3 million people in a short-term funding bill and just call this done. And it's just very odd to say, why would you ever do that in that setting? An immigration bill needs to be a standalone bill, debate it, walk through the process of it. We've already set the scope of it. That was what the president set just, 10 days ago now, to say these are 4 items that are in there. Let's finalize that. Once we actually get everyone to the table and to finalize it, we should. The leaders are meeting every single day on this. Our staff was in meetings earlier today. I was in meetings earlier today on it. We're meeting and working through this. And then to suddenly say, we're going to shut the government down if we don't get our proposal on it and we don't get it right now, just seems really strange.
Okay, I want to ask you quickly before we're out of time about an issue that you're really working on, which is executive nominations, and the fact that it's a very long process right now. There's a lot of success in a minority party, and it works for the Republicans too, in blocking these things. But there are so many positions unfilled within this administration, and it's a helpful tool for the opposition to say, we're not going to follow through on any of these nominations. Is there any way that, I know you're trying to work to change it, but will you have any bipartisan agreement on that?
I hope so. Again, we hit a moment like this in 2013 in the Senate. I wasn't there at that time, but Harry Reid came to McConnell and said, let's make a deal on how we're going to do nominations because we're stuck. We can't get anything moving. At that time, there were about 20 nominations that had been blocked. So there's a bipartisan agreement made. Here's how many hours we'll have in debate so we can move it. That was set when Harry Reid was in leadership 2013 and 2014. I brought that exact same deal back and said, now it's not 20 that have been blocked. You blocked 60 so far this last year. So it's over and above, far above what anything Republicans did, what Democrats are doing back. And so let's take the exact same deal that Democrats asked for that Republicans gave them in 2013. And so far the Democrats are saying, no, that was good for us, but it's not good for you. We won't agree to literally the exact same language on that. So I'm going to try to bring it to the floor and say, let's actually resolve this. There is a right way to do it, and let's do it the right way.
Yeah, with so many unfilled positions in key areas that would matter to the president and his goals.
And to the country, quite frankly. These are all key people in all these agencies.
All right, we'll see. Keep us updated. And by the way, you're going to stick around and come back for another hot topic. And so we will see you a little bit later in the hour.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you for doing that.
Thank
All
you.
right. We're going to have much more breaking news coverage tonight of the shutdown showdown on Capitol Hill. The debate raging late into the night tonight. We are tracking every development. Senator Lindsey Graham has gone back and forth with the White House and Democrats trying to find a deal on DACA. He will be here in a Fox News at Night exclusive. And as the crackdown on sanctuary cities continues and the debate over DACA takes center stage, we'll talk with Attorney General Jeff Sessions in another Fox News at Night exclusive.
He has changed the way he's looked at a number of things. He's adjusted the way he's looked at the South Asia strategy, Afghanistan. He's very definitely changed his attitude towards the DACA issue, and even the wall. He has evolved in the way he's looked at things.
White House Chief of Staff John Kelly on special report last night talking about how his boss, the president, has evolved from his views on the campaign trail to the Oval Office. The president today disputing that his views have changed, especially when it comes to building the border wall. The debate over immigration reaching a boiling point tonight as Senate Democrats vow to hold the line on DACA, hoping to force Republicans to deal on that or face a government shutdown. U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions joins us now with the latest from the Trump administration on immigration, the president, and much more. Mr. Attorney General, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, listen, you were one of the very first people from the Hill, one of the first senators ever to be out on the campaign trail with the president. Immigration was something the two of you talked about quite a bit. You seemed in lockstep on many of these issues. Do you agree with this assessment that he's evolved as he's gotten more information or more of the realities of Washington about what you can or can't get done?
Well, we all change and we learn something as we go forward, but his principles on immigration have not changed. He favored the wall. He's fought for it all the way through the campaign and in Congress. And he never said it was going to go from coast to coast. He never said every single inch of the border had to have a wall on it. So I think he's been quite consistent on that. What he is committed to do is to end the illegality in the system and to create a system of immigration that serves the national interest. It puts American interests first.
Okay, so today the president was he had very nice things to say about General Kelly. He praised him quite a bit, but we're told behind the scenes there was definitely some friction about the president being unhappy about the way that maybe the words that were used to describe how he's dealt with these issues. You've had a little bit of doghouse from the president before. What's it like to be in such a prominent position in the administration and to feel like maybe you have things to smooth over with the president?
The president says what he thinks. If he's unhappy with you, he lets people know he's unhappy with you. But General Kelly is a national treasure. What he's doing to help President Trump is really remarkable. He's provided leadership that's almost, to me, I'm not sure anybody else could have done as well as he. And I totally am supportive of General Kelly and a great personal admirer. He's got great integrity. He does not believe in shysters coming in and manipulating the administration. He spots them right off the bat. So he is a great American.
Okay, let's talk about the various immigration proposals now floating around the Hill. Obviously, the one that came to the president from Senators Graham and Durbin, bipartisan effort on the Senate side, was not well received. He said it was horrible. It's not what he campaigned on. He was not happy about that. It is so different in many ways from the House version coming from Chairman Goodlatte and others over there. How in the world do you see the two sides, both the parties and the houses, coming together to get something done?
The bill that works is the Goodlatte proposal. It may not be perfect, but it will actually work and do the things that President Trump has talked about doing. Unfortunately, the Durbin bill is just not going to work. It's the same thing we've seen before. The Senate is often prepared to vote for bills as long as they don't work. You produce a bill that would actually effectively end illegality, and that's all we're talking about. Who is in favor of illegal immigration? Is there anybody? Why keep defending it? Why keep blocking the laws that help end it? Why don't we create a system that has no illegality, that brings in people legally, and that we vet them and make sure they're not criminals, that they're not people who are going to be unable to function in this highly technical society? I think that is the right thing to do morally, legally, and as a matter of public policy.
You ask whether there are people who are for illegal immigration. So let's talk about this issue of local leaders who essentially declare sanctuary cities, or in California, sanctuary states, where they say they will not cooperate with the federal government, federal agencies in rooting out people who may be here illegally. The mayor of Oakland now saying she's happy to go to jail over it. There's this discussion on the Hill this week with DHS Secretary Nielsen about whether the administration would consider going after leaders who are protecting people who are here illegally and refusing to cooperate with the feds on that.
Look, it's unthinkable to me that somebody who breaks into our country, hauls, let's say, cocaine to Oakland, California, and is arrested 3 days later, and the city of Oakland is going to try to protect that person from being deported? What kind of logic is this? It's so unacceptable. It is an affirmation of illegality. It's an actual protection of illegality. And I'm not saying what is legal and not legal. I'm saying as a matter of policy, it's unthinkable to me that we would have public officials take that view.
Well, you know she's not alone. There are many out there who are vowing to do the same thing. And in California, there are several reports about potential ICE raids there of gathering up to 1,500 people who either are set for deportation, they have final orders, they've committed a specific crime, those kinds of things. But you have now California lawmakers saying this. This two senators from California authoring a letter, Senators Feinstein and Harris, saying, "We firmly believe that law enforcement must prioritize dangerous criminals, not undocumented immigrants who do not pose a threat to public safety. Diverting resources in an effort to punish California and score political points is an aberrant abuse of power, not to mention a terrible misuse of scarce resources."
It's not an attack on California. How could that possibly be? People who enter the country unlawfully are subject to being deported. A country unwilling to deport unlawful entrants is a country that's not serious about enforcing its border. That's what this election was about. And I think that we're in a position to make tremendous progress. We are in a position to dramatically reduce the illegality. And we are receiving large numbers of the criminal element in this illegal flow. We can make America safer. We can make America more prosperous. We can help bring people to the country who will flourish here and do well here. And it's just common sense to me.
What do you make of comments by DHS Secretary Nielsen saying that essentially folks from DACA, even if their grants to be here, their permission to be here for now, lapses at some point, as long as they're not committing a crime, they're not going to be an ICE priority for deportation? Is that something that you agree with? Do you think that lines up with the president's goals?
Well, ICE has to set priorities. Certainly, we all agree that people who come here illegally and then commit a crime while they're here should be the top priority, for example. And there are other priorities you would set within that, too. So that's the Department of Homeland Security has a limited number of resources, and they certainly should set priorities. But nobody in the government can declare somebody legally here, in my opinion, who Congress has said is illegally here.
Very quickly, I got to ask you, how is this job different than maybe you thought it would be, or is it what you expected?
It's a bottomless pit. You know, I tease my Senate friends. I said, this is a real job. I have to work 7 days a week, 12-hour days. But it's so much fun, and I think we're making some real progress. We've got some great people in the department, some great agents throughout the country, and it's an honor to be able to lead them.
Well, Mr. Attorney General, great to have you with us on Fox News tonight. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right, stick around for Steyerwalt, the Fox News politics editor, standing by to break down what we've heard from the Attorney General and Senator Lankford. Who blinks first in the showdown over immigration? That's next. And then Senator Lindsey Graham has been a key conduit between the president and his critics on Capitol Hill. Senator Graham was in the room when something President Trump said set off immigration firestorms. And Senator Graham will be here in the studio with us just ahead. General Jeff Sessions just telling us the president's principles have not changed on immigration. That is on the heels of White House Chief of Staff John Kelly saying the president's views maybe have evolved. Let's break it down with Fox News politics editor and the editor of the Halftime Report. Chris Steyerwalt joins us now to analyze what we have just heard. Let's play a little bit of what the president or what the Attorney General said about the president.
He favored the wall. He's fought for it all the way through the campaign and in Congress. And he never said it was going to go from coast to coast. He never said every single inch of the border had to have a wall on it. So I think he's been quite consistent on that.
And the president said today, I have been consistent.
Well, no, but...
No, that's what he said.
Well, I know he said that. but I guess the point is, the question for the president is how much he's going to penalize Kelly for saying a true thing. John Kelly said a true thing, which he would have been laughable if he said something else in order to maintain his credibility. Remember, this guy's the chief negotiator. This is the person on whom the prospects of government shutdown, deals on everything else, it all rests on John Kelly. He's the guy that Republicans and Democrats alike look to as he's the go-between. You got to trust this guy. He said of Trump, yeah, he didn't understand everything as it exists in the world when he started running for president.
Candidates don't.
Like, duh. Like, of course. So what has happened is Democrats and, of course, the sort of Team Chaos folks in the White House who don't like Kelly and don't like the iron grip that Kelly has placed on them and restrictive access. So they're out briefing against Kelly and saying this is disloyalty. He is wrong to say that the president's views evolved. It is wrong to say that the president was ill-informed when he made his original promises. And tonight you heard Jeff Sessions sit right here and say, please spare this man. Let Kelly go, let him off the hook, Mr. President.
And he did have nice things to say about him today. The president did. And what the attorney general says is, listen, the president speaks his mind. You know when he's not happy with you. He went on to call General Kelly a national treasure.
He did.
So
you could sense that Sessions very much did not want Kelly to meet the same fate that he did when the president put him in the barrel and made him the GOAT for his recusal.
I asked him about his time in the doghouse. Okay, so a lot of folks may end up in the doghouse tomorrow night at this time because it does not look like they have the votes for a shutdown. What do you think?
Well, here's the thing. Right now, this is a truth of this experience, and you know it well. The minority party wants to keep, well, let's have a 3-day extension. Let's have a 2-day extension. And what Schumer and the Democrats are trying to do now is they want as many negotiations as possible because the shorter term it is, the more leverage they have to get what they want, which is this amnesty for the people, for the young adults who were brought to the United States as minors illegally. And they want to have as many negotiating sessions as possible in hopes that they will finally get the Republicans to break down and say, okay, just fund the government and move on. So it looks like what we're heading into is going to be life support, 5 days, 3 days, bleep, 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 and they'll try to make it through. But that definitely works to the Democrats' advantage in the longer term.
All right. Well, we'll be watching here because tomorrow night it's going to go down. And we know you'll be watching too.
I will definitely be watching.
Thank you, Chris Darwell.
Woo.
All right. He has been in the room for all the big moments with the president, trying to reach a deal before it's too late. Stick around for Fox News at Night exclusive with Senator Lindsey Graham. He'll respond to the White House's rejection of his latest proposal on DACA and make a prediction about the odds of a shutdown. When asked if the short-term funding bill will pass the Senate, House Republicans say tonight, we did our job. That's where we are now, facing recalcitrant Republicans and Democrats who want a DACA deal or they have other reasons for voting no. GOP Senator Lindsey Graham got together with Democrat Dick Durbin to try to find a bipartisan fix. But here's how the White House saw that plan, as stated right here on Fox News at Night last night.
It's like 1/10 of the funding that we actually need to secure the wall. And then the other part of this is when you look at the Senate proposal, it actually increases illegal immigration. It doesn't end the diversity visa lottery. And so what happens is that it does lead to increased illegal immigration. Why do we want to be in that particular situation? It makes no sense.
All right. Makes no sense. Well, Senator Graham is here to respond as we await a Senate vote on many important things.
Yes.
So she said your plan that you came to the president with doesn't make any sense because it increases illegal immigration.
She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's a nice lady. Clearly, she hasn't looked at it. What it does is it has $2.7 billion for border funding. The president's request for FY18, we give him every penny. What we do is begin to break chain migration by limiting green card holders to nuclear family. You no longer can bring in adult children.
You don't get rid of chain migration altogether.
That's round two. So what we're not going to do is get all we want in round one, and they give us DACA. So if you don't want to do comprehensive, which I agree with, you got to break it in two parts. The president deserves border funding, and I promise you he will get it. He may can get some more. At the end of the day, the 800,000 DACA kids, they're not kids, but young adults run out of legal status March the 5th. We're going to take care of them. We're going to begin to secure our border. We're going to begin to break chain migration. We're going to end the diversity lottery. Now, I'll say this. If you don't like what we did with the 50,000 visas, what's your plan? To the White House. Tell me what your plan is to end the diversity lottery. I'm willing to end it. Tell me how much money you want for border security, and I'll tell you whether or not it's possible. The one thing I do know, we're not going to give 11 million people legal status and hope one day the Democrats will work with us on the border, and they're not going to give us all we want on the border and one day hope we'll deal with the 11 million. The DACA population is 10% of the legal immigrant population.
10%.
10%.
Okay, so listen, you and the president not BFFs during the campaign. You guys had some really, really nasty words for each other.
No,
he gave out your cell phone number.
Really do
you
like
had to chop it up with a chainsaw and get a new number.
Yeah.
Then you guys became BFFs, and you're playing golf together, and you're praising him for the things that you think he's getting right on foreign policy and other things.
A lot.
Then you bring him this deal, and here's what he says. It was horrible on border security. It was very, very weak on reforms for the legal immigration system. He says it's the opposite of what I campaigned campaign for?
You know,
is he going to give out your cell phone number again? Or are you guys going to patch this up?
We're gonna be just fine, because what I did was listen to what he said Tuesday. I'm a very good listener.
I know that about you.
I listened to everything the president says, and on Tuesday he said, I want to do a bill that's strong on security with love. I want a bipartisan bill. Send me one. This proposal is a start. I'm very proud of it. I've been doing immigration reform for 10 years. Under my proposal, DACA kids could get citizenship in 5 years. Under this proposal, they got to wait 12 years.
But you know, for some people that you say citizenship at all, they hear amnesty and they say, why are we going to create a situation where 10, 20 years from now we're doing this again?
These kids came here the average age of 6 years old. They've got no place to go. I want them to be citizens. I want them to get a good education. I want them to understand who America is. They got to wait 12 years. But if you don't want the children to be part of America, then I couldn't disagree with you more. I want them to stay on our terms. These will be the Trump dreamers. The president has a chance to have a legacy that Obama and Bush could never embrace. It would be wonderful if Donald Trump could take these young people who have no other country other than America and give them a chance to be part of us. He will be responsible for a lot of good things. There'll be a few bad, but he can also secure the border. I'm not asking the president to legalize 800,000 people without getting something. He's going to get money for the border. Round two is when we get all this other stuff.
All right, in the meantime, 24 hours from now, we're going to be covering right here possibly a potential government shutdown on Fox News at night.
Want me to make a prediction?
You've told us you're voting no. So where do we go from here?
I'm not going to vote for a 30-day continuing resolution. The House said they did their job. How much money did the Defense Department get from the House bill? This is the fourth CR. Every time we have a continuing resolution, it costs the military billions of dollars.
Yeah, but if it shuts down, they get nothing.
Well, it's not going to shut down, and we're not going to wait 30 more days. These young people, called DACA recipients, their life turns upside down March the 5th. Some people say, well, that's not that long. I mean, that's a long time away, not if you're one of them. But you know what drives my train? Is the military is suffering greatly. The president wants $130 billion of additional funding. We can get that only if we deal with DACA. I want to do two things. I want to fund the military and deal with DACA, and we're not going to get one without the other. I'm tired of playing this stupid game. The public hates the way we do business. Count me in. This chaos is going to end. I'm willing to keep the government open days, not weeks, to get a deal that we should have got a year ago.
All right, we're going to check in with you tomorrow night.
Yes.
We'll see what happens, because there are some important votes between now and then. All right, Senator Graham, always good to see you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks for coming in. All right, 45 years after Roe versus Wade legalized abortion across America, pro-life advocates are getting ready to march for life here in Washington. Senator Langford returns along with evangelical leader Dr. Russell Moore and religious liberty advocate Kristen Waggoner to talk about that and a new government religious freedom agency to shield the faithful. The left does not like it. Stick around. Become the first sitting U.S. president to stream in live to address the March for Life. But new polls show more Americans are calling themselves pro-choice. So where does the pro-life movement go from here? Oklahoma Senator James Langford, along with Dr. Russell Moore, president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission for the Southern Baptist Convention, and Kristen Waggoner from the Alliance Defending Freedom, are all here to talk about this hot issue. Thank you all for your time tonight. Thank you. All right, Senator, I want to ask you, we're having the big march tomorrow, but this is ahead of on Monday, a big vote in the Senate on this bill that's a 20-week ban. The science or the argument being that at 5 months in utero, that pain can be felt. Doctors use anesthesia to operate in those cases. And, you know, the left says, the pro-choice side said that this is not based on science. It's based on religious bigotry, and that you shouldn't be getting involved in this.
You know what's very odd about this is that 191 countries around the world have resolved this. The United States is one of 7 countries in the world that still allows elective late-term abortions. In fact, Canada, Singapore, and the Netherlands have determined it only goes to 24 weeks. After that, the United States is apart for elective late-term abortions with a very elite group of nations. We are with Vietnam, North Korea, and China allowing late-term elective abortions. The rest of the world has said late-term abortions should not be allowed. These are viable children that, if delivered, even delivered early, they would survive on their own, and we see it every day in America, these children surviving, but yet we still allow those late-term abortions. So I think the vast majority of Americans, even a lot of Americans that identify themselves as pro-choice, don't support support late-term abortions.
Many of them do support some kind of restrictions of some measure, especially late in the term. There's a new poll out today, Marist, asking people whether they identify themselves as pro-life or pro-choice. Dr. Moore, 44% now say pro-life, 51% say pro-choice, though. They're now in the majority here in the U.S.
Yes, but one of the things I think is really startling, if you'd gone back in a time machine to 1973 and said, what would the pro-life movement look like in 2018? I think most people would have said, well, there will be no pro-life movement. The country will have just moved on. And yet the March for Life, seeing masses of people gathering here, including very young people who are coming across the country at their own expense to stand up for life, that's really remarkable. Not to mention all of the things that are going on all around the country to minister to vulnerable women and to care for unborn children and for born children. So I'm very encouraged with where things are going.
Well, and today also the administration rolled out something, and a lot of folks in the pro-life movement feel like this administration has been a very good friend to them. On the left, there's a new report out by NARAL identifying anti-choice groups is the way they term it, and saying that this president is sort of their worst nightmare because he is delivering on a lot of those campaign promises. And they say it's taking women backwards. It's taking us back to a different time. And they add this to the list, the fact that today the administration has said under HHS civil rights portion there, they're going to have a conscience protection and religious freedom protection group that's actually going to enforce the law when it comes to folks, for instance, a nurse who says, I don't want to take part in an abortion, but I don't want to lose my job.
Well, I would go back to, first of all, in this poll, 76% of Americans actually do support limitations on abortion, and that's in that same poll. And when we look at what HHS is doing, this Office of Civil Rights that was announced today, what we can see is they're simply going to enforce existing law. They're not creating new law, and they're saying that no American should be forced to lose their job because of their convictions, and abortion shouldn't be a litmus test to be able to participate in the marketplace. So it's a very reasonable approach. And again, it's just enforcing existing law, which the Obama administration did not do.
And quickly, I want to ask you before we're all out of time, do you feel like the march gets fair coverage, yes or no? It's a large group.
No, it doesn't. It's a very large group, and it's most often just ignored by the national media.
Do you think that'll be different tomorrow with the president's involvement?
I hope it will be different. And I think if most people could see the kind of energy taking place on the Mall, it would be astounding.
Well, we're going to be covering it like we always do, and we'll be out and about and hear from folks on both sides of this issue, but we certainly will cover something that is such a big impact on D.C. every year when it happens. Thank you all for coming in. Good to see you. All right, that is it from Washington. I'm Shannon Bream. We want to let you know that this time next week, we will be in Jerusalem. We have an exclusive interview with the Vice President. We'll sit down with him Monday, and we'll bring you the show live from Jerusalem. Good night from Washington. That's it for here for now.